that's a very, very difficult scenario. And sometimes what could happen is if dad doesn't do any planning, and again, I'm saying dad only because in the generation of people 60 to 70 years old, principally they were run by men. So if dad didn't do planning, has a simple will and dies and leaves the business, leaves all his assets to his wife, what happens is it's very different between somebody who is a mother and a wife and somebody who is a widow. When somebody becomes a widow and the husband was the breadwinner, the wife gets very nervous and as a widow, protective and very scared to do things. So, you could have kids in a business that are 30 years old. Dad died at 60. Mom now inherits the stock, doesn't know anything about the business. The kids are running the business, but mom's in control. So mom could argue with them over what salaries they take, how much compensation they give to mom, how they're running the business, what kind of risks they take in running the business. Mom could be very conservative and say, I don't want to acquire another company. I don't want to take out a loan in the business. I want to know I'm going to get my income. The other problem that could arise is the kids do such a great job of running the business and they grow the business from a $5 million business to a $50 million business. And when mom dies, they're going to have to pay estate taxes on that $50 million business, even though they're the ones who built it from a $5 to a $50 million business. And they don't even know who mom's going to leave the business to. She could decide to leave it to the child that she gets along best with rather than the ones that are actually running the business. That gets very complicated because depending upon whether or not, the founder has a prenup or not with the second spouse, things could be very different. So let's assume for a minute there isn't a prenup. What happens is you cannot disinherit a spouse. I'm going to use New York where I'm located. New York, a spouse has to get a third of the estate unless there's some agreement in place that's been signed by both spouses. So if you have a business and that business is your major asset, you can't just say, I'm going to leave the business to my kids in the business and I'm going to leave my second spouse $1 million or $2 million. Because since that spouse is entitled to 1/3 of your estate, she's going to be on the side of the IRS. Because the higher the value of the business, the more in estate taxes your children are going to have to pay. But she knows that the higher the value of that business, the more 1/3 is worth. So if the business gets valued for $20 million, she gets a third of it, which is roughly $7 million is what she's entitled to. Forget your other assets. If the business only valued at $10 million, then she's only entitled to $3 million. So she doesn't necessarily want the business. She wants to get assets. And the higher the business is valued, the more she's entitled to. So she's incentivized to have that business valued as high as possible, which is going to cost your children a lot in estate taxes and a lot in litigation.